Hi, everybody, and welcome to the new season for the Visiting Artist Series here at University of Florida. Um, this is the first talk of the season, and next week on September 28th, we'll have Ken Friedman speaking at 6:15. Tonight, we are pleased to have Philip Corner here to discuss his work. For those of you that are watching at home, please get a carrot or two from the refrigerator for optimum viewing and hold on for later in the talk. In addition to Philip Corner, we have curator Jade Dellinger here with us tonight. I will introduce Jade and he will introduce Philip, and we will moderate the talk together. Jade Dellinger is the director of the Bob Rauschenberg Gallery at Florida Southwestern State College. He collaborates regularly with the Contemporary Art Museum at the University of South Florida, Tampa Museum of Art, and Black Mountain College Museum. In 1994, he invited artist Doug Aiken to present his first site-specific video installation, I'd Die for You, at Pasco Center in Holiday, Florida. He curated Maurizio Cattelan's US museum debut, Choose Your Destination, How to Get a Museum Paid Vacation in 1995, and organized the Keith Edmeyer EKKE project, a collaborative installation with iconic motorcycle daredevil Evel Knievel in 1997 at USF CAM. Dellinger has curated major solo shows for Alan McCullum, the Gorilla Girls, Lucy Orda, Atelier Van Lieshout, Carlos Morales, Felice Varini, Keith Haring, The Art Guys, Yoko Ono, John Cage, Christo and Jean-Claude, Mark Mothersbaugh, and Beatty Wolf, and others. He has contributed to numerous exhibition catalogs and publications, including Sculpture, Flash Art International, Art Papers, Guitar Aficionado, and Permanent Food, and co-authored the book, Are We Not Men, We Are Devo, which traces the history of the seminal 1980s New Wave band. The talk tonight is funded by the University of Florida Visiting Artist Series, the Harn Eminent Scholar Committee, the HESCA, and the Bob Rauschenberg Gallery. So if you have questions tonight, please feel free to ask them within the Zoom, and we'll come to them at the end. And also on Thursday, Sergio Vega at 7 p.m., his graduate seminar class will be doing a extended, like an hour-long Q&A with Philip Corner to talk about his work. And so get in touch with Sergio or I if you'd like to be added to that Zoom link. But I'll let Jade go ahead and introduce Phil.
Thanks so much, Sean. It's really a pleasure to be here and to have this opportunity to have Philip Corner. Philip is renowned as an American composer, musician, music theorist, and educator, and a celebrated visual artist. His music, has explored unexpected sounds, minimalism, chance activities. He's now living, working, and joining us in the middle of the night from Reggio Emilia, Italy. So we appreciate his staying up late to be here with us. He was a founding member of Fluxus. His legendary piano activities controversially dismantled and destroyed a piano when first performed in 1962 at the Festum Fluxorium International New Music Festival in Wiesbaden, while simultaneously helping to launch the movement. As a resident composer and musician with the Judson Dance Theater in New York from 1962 to 64, Corner's relationship with John Cage and with our gallery namesake at the Bob Rauschenberg Gallery were decades long. Cage's sort of famous class at the New School for Social Research was something that later Mr. Corner took over.
Sometimes.
And we've had the great pleasure of having him here to Florida Southwestern State College to exhibit his metal meditations and to perform it with his esteemed dancer and closest collaborator, Phoebe Neville. We've also had him title an exhibition here, Fluzusic Fluxus Music. He's currently in an exhibition that I've curated up in Asheville, North Carolina, at the Black Mountain College Museum and Art Center, a show called Don't Blame It on Zen, The Way of John Cage and Friends. But with that, I would invite Philip now to join us, and we appreciate his presence and look forward to the conversation.
Is that my cue to say something?
Hello.
Whoa.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Ciao, tutti.
So we will be putting up some slides, and for a much more extensive biography, I would invite you to have a look at the link that you are seeing here as well, that is about 5 pages of Phil's extraordinary history, some of which I hope we will touch on.
By the way, it's only 4 pages, but I've added to it since I'll be sending you the definitive update. I've been squeezing more and more stuff into those 4 pages. So this is in a way superseded. Yeah. But, you know, I think the essential stuff is still there. The important thing is that I got rid of the deadwood professors who just came with the university, you know, and you know how you always get, he studied at such and such university with so-and-so. And that was just because that guy was the head of the music department, you know, and I've said, for this time, I'm getting rid of those guys. And I'm putting in the people that were really important. So you see, like, there's Fritz Jahoda, who was my personal thing, and Paul-Émile Bourgeois, who I knew in Paris and had no status at all, except that he was a great artist and he was my friend. So stuff like that.
And who were the most influential people for you as you were studying, Phil? And then also colleagues, I mean, later. Obviously, you have a long history as a professor, and I guess most recently had been a professor at Rutgers University, but
That's a long time ago.
it is
I
now
retired in 1992. That was 3,000 miles away.
Yes.
Phil, it mentions in the bio that you sent that you studied calligraphy in Korea, and also we wanted to ask a question about like the writing style that you employ. Like, we send emails back and forth all the time and have gotten used to the lyrical nature of it. But could you talk about calligraphy and your writing style as an approach, as a creative strategy?
Well, one aspect of it is the handwriting, you know, that I, as you see from this bio, at least the bio is all typed, so I'm not against that. I sometimes combine writing and the printing, but I've been recently looking over my calligraphic texts and all that, and I'm actually quite displeased with the level of my calligraphy. It really all started from being in Korea, seeing the inherent beauty of the Chinese letters, particularly Chinese letters, but the native Korean alphabet has its visual qualities too, and the use of the brush. And I just thought this was extremely deficient in our culture. And even when it's written, I always used to say there's no calligraphy in the West. There's only penmanship. And the idea that somehow the writing itself could be an art, that became then part of something which is bigger, which is the overall use of space instead of just a block, linear, line by line, fill up the space type thing that is the norm. So it's
Philip, how did you connect with Ki Sung Kim, who was your the master calligrapher?
Yeah. Well, that was fortuitous. Of course, you know, I was only in the army because I was drafted, and I was only in Korea because I was in the army. They sent me there. I was a trombone player. And I used to escape to Seoul as often as I could. They had sent me out of Seoul and transferred me to a local band, the 8th Cavalry, 1st Cavalry, first with those big yellow patches, the ones that eventually got creamed in Vietnam. But we were just doing guard duty north of Seoul. I say guard duty, everybody knew that if the North Koreans ever came over the DMZ, we were, we had it. But there was the pretense that we were maintaining the line up there. In any case, that's where I was. And I said, I'm making the most of my my time here. And so I would sneak off the base and get on what they called a kimchi bus, a local transportation. The people in the army called everything kimchi. They never ate it either. And my favorite is with cucumber, although the normal is with cabbage, but it's great. And anyway, so I would get off the base and go to Seoul every duty day that I didn't have to stay in the base, because sometimes we played night events. We'd go to some of the outlying infantry units and play big band stuff and all that. But the duty day usually ended sometime in the afternoon. So I would go down and then I'd come back on the last bus, which was 11 o'clock. So I'd get home at 12. And of course, I was up at 5 because of reveille.
Wow.
Basically, I spent the whole year being tired all the time. And I said, I'm not giving the Army 1 minute more of the time that they're obliging me to. And I was quite fortunate. I was married to Steyr Avens, who was a cellist who had just graduated from Juilliard, where she had become a friend of the son of the conductor of the Seoul Symphony, and as a result became first cellist of the Seoul Symphony and came over to Seoul and was living in the house of a retired ROK admiral whose children were also musicians, and the oldest of them, Chegyu, was a pianist who eventually played in my farewell concert before I left Seoul. And so I had a place to go to, and I would just, as I say, get in a civilian bus, drive all the way into Seoul, go home, and then just do all sorts of stuff. And one of the things, I would go to art galleries and meet people, and one of the people that I met was Mr. Kim, and I don't know how it just somehow through people who were bilingual, I communicated with him, and somehow I got to be his student, and I'd go and try to learn Chinese letters. And he would always say, "What's more difficult, playing the piano or Chinese letters?" So of course I said Chinese letters, and that made him feel very good. And he was wonderful, and I still have a few things that I bought from him that I live with, and that was a big influence on me, because I don't think I would have started the calligraphic pieces I did when I came back without that. Not that I was using a marker for the different pieces. Ink marks for performance is one of them, and solo violin, and there's the piano one. And the purpose was to how should I say, graph the sound itself. I mean, music notation is inherently a graphic thing. It's a picture, and it's a picture of musical space. And especially if you're into the Oriental ideal of the internal movement of the sound, that it's not just a straight line that would be reproduced horizontally, like a brick, like the unit of Western music practice. But the sound is always moving. It glides. It's ornamented and it moves in space. So of course, I'm dealing with a post-Cajun total space kind of thing. So I'm gone beyond pentatonic scale or any kind of cheap imitation or orientalia, but I'm using the idea of modulating the sounds themselves, and they're so obviously you design the sound, and the sound will become an exact transcription of the ups and downs of the graphic, and that doesn't require, I should say, any kind of a discipline technique, but I would never have somehow dared to do it without having studied calligraphy, and that gave me just the confidence. Well, I do have a minimum competence in some kind of a visual thing, so I allowed myself to get into what became a major thing throughout my whole life of sculpting sounds, and that became sometime later on. It became an independent visual art that wasn't necessarily linked to sound in any specific way. Of course, anything you put on a paper could be interpreted as sound, following a three-dimensional thing. But anyway.
Was traditional Korean music important to you? I mean, or in terms of being an influence also, or?
Well, many years later, Jody Diamond, the head of the American Gamelan Institute, was the person I always joke, Jody, you could go to Jakarta and play weddings, but you haven't even listened to all the Beethoven symphonies once, and but we had a very close relationship because of the American Gamelan Institute, and I was involved in gamelan music. Of course, Southeast Asian music is very, very different from the Chinese cultural sphere. And so one day she said, Phil, you gotta listen to this. I said, oh, Suja-chan. She said, you know that piece? I said, that's the most beautiful piece in the history of humanity. And it turns out it is. Well, it's the oldest extant piece of the Korean court repertoire. And I don't know whether there's anything in China, certainly not in Japan, that's any older than that. No, it's a very, very, very old piece. And it's still maintained as a repertoire thing in the Kogak-1, the Korean National Music Association. And I listened to it every day. It was the theme song of Korean National Music Hour, which I listened to faithfully every afternoon. And I mean, and then the idea of heterophony, which of course you could learn from books, which I did. I had read Kurt Sachs when I was in college, and so heterophony as a technique, but somehow falling in love with that piece and combining that with the microtonal ornamentation and timbre exploration, and as a technique, a quasi-contrapuntal harmonic technique, I used heterophony also, but again, never falling into chinoiserie type, using what do you call it, black note scales. I would, accepted the John Cage innovation of total space, total sonic space.
Phil, the slides have jumped ahead of us a little bit, but there's a lovely one that's up currently, which is from the Avant-Garde Festival. And I
see there's this photograph up. Phoebe, look, there's you in the photograph.
I thought Phoebe was in the photograph as well. Perhaps you can identify a few of those people and tell us a little bit about your memories of performing in so many of those festivals.
Well, there's Phoebe on the extreme right, leaning in to make sure that she's oh, Phoebe, you were so young then. Yeah, she still is. And then kneeling in front of her is James Tenney,
Yes.
who was my great friend, and we worked together with Malcolm Goldstein. We founded the Tone Roads, the first chamber ensemble that became more than just a chamber ensemble. But we did Ives, and then we did, the classics, Ruggles and Cowell, and then we got more and more modern, and we eventually, did our own stuff. And Fluxus, Alison Knowles shaving Dick Hagen's head, and all that was part of, become part of these concerts. And there's Charlotte Mormon standing next to Namjoon Pike over on the left side.
Yes.
There's a whole lot of people. Dick Higgins in the middle.
Yeah.
There's Meredith Monk is in there. Yeah, a whole lot of really great people.
And that was you on a knee in the front as well, correct? I think.
Yeah, I'm there
Yeah.
next to Jim. I had
Yeah.
hair then. Look at that.
Oh, I think we're jumping into piano activities. Actually, that we didn't really talk at all about Judson, but that might be a nice thing to also make mention of is your connection, as you were composer in residence for the Judson Memorial Church, which also really connected you with a wide variety of people of all disciplines. Correct?
Well, I had as soon as I came back from Korea, I lived in New York. I got a place on the Lower East Side, which I would always say is the only place to live in New York. And that was just incredible. It was the kind of place that you just walk down the street and there's a coffee shop and there's a poetry reading going on, and you go in there and it's Paul Blackburn, and I thought, oh, this is normal. After you graduate and you go out in the world, it's like that. But it was New York in the 1960s, and it was really extraordinary. And I immediately got in with the in crowd, if you will. I had already known Alison Knowles and Dick Higgins, and so I got very quickly into the George Machunas circle, because, as a matter of fact, when I came back, the AG Gallery was on its last legs. They already hadn't paid the rent, and so George wanted to give me a concert, but they were closing down then. So I went to all the concerts. So of course that's where I met Lamont, and that's where I, so everybody was somehow in on that. And so some of those people became, proto-Fluxus. But in any case, I was working with and knowing and hanging around with those people right from the very beginning when I came back in the spring of 1961.
The slide that is up currently is of piano activities. I wonder if you could address that. It was a hugely controversial thing that helped to really launch Fluxus, but it's often misunderstood.
Yeah, well, I wrote that in the summer of 61. That was that first summer, that very rich summer that I spent meeting all these people. And there was no Fluxus then. There was no Judson Dance Theater then. But I've always been interested in dance. I think that's something inherently physical in my approach to making music, which relates to dance. And I had already, while I was still at Columbia, we're talking about 3 years earlier, done a piece for Jimmy Waring. And in a way, that's what you might say brought me downtown. So I was downtown even before I escaped from Morningside Heights. And I met through, as a matter of fact, I met Jimmy Waring through John Herbert McDowell and Richard Maxfield, two very good composers who I became very close to also during that period. And that kind of introduced me to the scene. And through Jimmy, I met all these dancers. And the first person I worked with was Yvonne Rainer. She did a dance with Satie, and I played the getthe. Eventually, I actually did a composition for her. But there was this business of, everybody was kind of doing everything, wasn't just dance and music and everything, but people were doing poetry readings and going to lofts, and people were moving, and it was very fluid. And so I remember after one of these sessions, it probably was something that happened at the Living Theater, because they were on 14th Street and 6th Avenue. Was it 6th Avenue, Phoebe?
6th Avenue, yeah.
And across the street, there was a kind of a hangout place. And I remember the evening that I was sitting there with Yvonne Rainer and some of the other dancers, and they talked about continuing Bob Dunn's class, which was a kind of eclectic Cage Cunningham dance music theory practice thing that a lot of the dancers were in on, and using Cage's analysis of time structures and things like that. So they wanted to continue doing that, not as a class, but as a workshop. So I was in on that, and I would go every week to it. The first time it was over on the east side in somebody's loft. I don't remember whose loft it was, but anyway. And then somehow out of that, people were doing things. The idea was everybody could do anything. The dancers could do sound events, and the non-dancers could move, and people could just bring in ideas to throw out to people, and everybody was supposed to participate. Everybody was supposed to bring in creative ideas and perform them and do them. So we were just doing that for a while. And then some of them went over to the Judson Memorial Church, and they got accepted to do some of our stuff as concert stuff. So then we got the concert of dance number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then it went on for 2 years, and it became the Judson Dance Theater. And but that's just how it happened out as a cooperative thing. And when you say I was a composer in residence or whatever, there was nothing so fancy. I was just another participant. And I remember Yvonne saying at the beginning, anybody who needs sound or something like that, go to Philip and see what he'll do for you. And the first person that took me up on that was Lucinda Childs. And so, well, that's just what happened. And I did stuff.
Philip, I was curious how many times were piano activities performed publicly before it ended up in Wiesbaden?
Just once. In my first concert in New York was January or February, early in 1962. It was supposed to have been done at Yoko Ono's loft on Chambers Street, which was something that I missed out on because I knew Yoko before I left New York for the Army, and she certainly would have included me in that series. But that happened while I was in Korea. And when I came back, it wasn't happening. But Yoko said, "Oh yeah, well, you can use my loft." But when I went down there, the landlord said that was all illegal, and all that. There's no way you're going to do a concert in my loft. So I got accepted at the Judson, and that was before the Judson Dance Theater. There were some avant-garde activities, a Poets Theater, or there were some things going on at Judson even before. It gradually expanded more during the 60s, but they allowed me to do a concert, and I did a concert. It was in the organ loft, actually, and we did piano activities, and basically I just got everybody I knew to be one of the people. The idea was many people are surrounding the piano and using the piano as a total sound instrument, and playing on different parts of it with objects. And that's the basic idea of it. And all of this stuff is just elaboration. At that time, obviously the verbal score has some relationship to the, you might say what became the Fluxus verbal score, the short verbal score, which, you know, some people like George Berkson, Lamont, and Allison made very, very short, you know, statements, so sometimes just a few words. I eventually did some things like that myself. But at the beginning, of course, Cage did some things like this, which were totally verbal scores, but not the little minimal verbal score on a card. So this was one of the first all verbal descriptions. And of course, what that's all about is having a conception of the concept of the composition, which allows people to improvise within the concept rather than spelling out by specific notes and rhythms or stuff what they're supposed to play. So this is one of the earlier, you might say, concept pieces, and it's pretty prolix. And later on, I wouldn't have written so much detail, but at that time, having improvising performers, and we did have a very small group of improvising performers. But I mean, but we had Malcolm Goldstein and Max Newhouse, and I mean, we had Charlotte Warman. I mean, it was an incredible group of people, but that was really rare at that time. I mean, unless you were doing jazz, but
was Ben
yeah, it
Patterson?
was a completely different world. And yeah,
Phil, I was curious, was Ben Patterson and George Marchunas or any of the people that performed it later, were they at the one performance that you did? Were they people that participated?
No. Ben Patterson, I don't believe ever performed in that piece. Dick Higgins,
Well, he was
wasn't
involved in Wiesbaden, no?
Yeah, and he was in both performances. He was in the New York performance also. And he's the one who brought the score to George. When he went over, he brought a whole bunch of pieces of mine, and a number of them were programmed, but I think Piano Activities was the only piece that was actually performed. And that was a very curious thing about the using objects. You don't have to use objects to play on the, but a lot of the activities that even the ones I described involve using objects, but there's also was the supplement that you're supposed to discipline yourself by practicing certain kinds of limited activities. I eventually got past that kind of precision, and I got my instructions down to a much clearer but more general way of trying to, you know, I said, discipline the performers. And like when you get to a point that, like at the last Fluxus Festival in Wiesbaden, when you get a group like just the old group, you know, Ben Patterson and of course Dick wasn't there, but Allison was there, and was it
Nam June?
Nam June was not there either. You know, a lot of these people are
Jeffrey Hendricks was
are going. Jeffrey Hendricks was still alive then, and we had that young Danish guy.
Eric Anderson.
Yeah, Eric Anderson. So when you get a group like people like that together, and you do piano activities, you don't have to give them any instructions at all. And so that last performance in Wiesbaden was it was a fantastic experience. But in the early days, it was really more like, for instance, the performance at the Judson, there was no question of them destroying a piano. Some people were just playing on the piano with their hands and fists, and others were using small objects or so. But it was the idea of doing these different sound activities using the total piano. And
How did Philip? How did you hear about the piano being destroyed, and what was your initial impression that had happened?
oh, that's been written about, right? And my apologies and whatever. I believe it. Somebody told me about it. I believe it was Allison.
Yeah.
And my first response was, oh, this is off the wall, because I'm not anti-art. I've never been anti-art. This is not anti-art, but there was an anti-art aspect to Fluxus, like some of the people. I mean, you know, you got a militant Henry Flint, you know, a real dogmatist, and George Mitsounis himself. There was, and then people like Ben Vautier took it into satire, and some of Nam June's things also were satire. There's a lot of like, we're just smashing traditional culture. So there was that aspect. So the first thing I responded to was, oh, they're bringing it into this down with Western culture, you know, fuck series culture and all of that. So, but then I thought it over, and I thought, well, you know, it's just a question of extreme energy. You could do all the things that I wrote down and planned. So, and if you did it with sufficient energy, the piano would break. You know, if you didn't have the inhibition about destroying this precious instrument. And but then I thought, okay, you could do that. So piano activities could be used in such a way as to bring it to a transformed state, which I've done in subsequently. As a matter of fact, I see that there's the object which is now in the permanent collection of the Villa Croce in Genova, which we turned into a sculpture, and we kind of quite specifically put together as a sculptural work of art. And you can see it's not just thrown together. And in every case, the performance has led to, I say, sculptural results. So there's a transformation. I even wrote a text called The Morality of Transformation. Anyway, so that's what the story of piano activities was, except that I also started thinking about, well, what could, suppose you had the intention to destroy the piano, what would you do? And I conceived quiet work of destruction, which would be done really delicately, and that was done as an all-day participation event in Naples with Beppe Mora. And very recently, a few years ago, it was done in Strasbourg, and I just got this because this was a piece that just has disappeared between then and now. Nobody talked about quiet work of destruction, and this person at the University of Strasbourg said, I love it. I want you to come and I want to do this with my students. So it was done again, quiet work of destruction. In the meanwhile, I had the occasion to do piano activities at various workshops. And actually there are 4, which are now on a recording called Piano Activities Work Plays, which was produced as a cassette by More Mars in Greece. And I understand that it was been sold out, and Telemark from Berlin is going to bring it out as an LP next year. It's slated for a vinyl next year. So I was very concerned that get out of the playing it, when I say quote unquote seriously, the concert version, where as a matter of fact in these workshops, I told people what not to do, what parts not to touch, in order to make sure that no part of a very, very fine piano was done. So there are those 4 workshops. And then this, I just mentioned this, I got this noticed a few years ago. And as a matter of fact, there's a record of Fluxus music in Leipzig. And this Steffen Schleiermacher, who's recorded all the Cage piano pieces and all the Feldman and all that stuff, did a Fluxus concert, and they did a performance of piano activities, of course, the serious concert version, in the Leipzig Gewandhaus. Keep saying, like, poor Mendelssohn.
Philip, there was a question that came through. I just put up an image of you and Phoebe installing seed music, and there was a question that came from the audience at the same time that said, when making a piece, when do you feel it's complete? And I thought the seed music would be a good one, and piano activities both.
Well, seed music was easy. That was when we ran out of seeds.
Yeah.
But,
No room for growth there?
what?
There's no room for growth there?
Well, this wall is now hidden at the this was at the Fondazione Mudema in Milano, and it's now hidden behind a false wall. So I don't think it's sprouting, but it's just that we were planning to have a performance to invite musicians and to stand in front of the wall and play it. But that never happened, and it probably never will, because Gino DiMaggio has retired to his beloved Sicily, and the Mudema Foundation is kind of functioning. I'm hoping to get invited to Sicily because I love it. But in any case, that's the story of finishing. I don't think, what do you say, Phoebe? It's finished when you stop. Yeah, it's finished when you stop.
Philip, can you talk a little bit about your relationship to Italy and how you sort of got there, but also clearly there are institutions, collectors, museums, et cetera, with whom you've had long relationships?
Well, it came out of, it's very, very strange how one thing leads to another and almost opposites. I came back from France, so you might say pissed off by French academism, which was a mixture of this traditional stuffed shirt, post Louis XIV kind of snobism, and the total serialism, the Boulez phenomenon. And I came here, and that was what was in, and I'm coming from City College in New York, and I go to the conservatory, and the students are all talking about what do you do new in your new string quartet? They're talking about where the history of music is and what the next necessary innovation is. And I was thinking, I never thought about things like that. Nobody ever talked to me like that. So I got into that, and of course it was very heady at the first time, and especially discovering Messiaen, who wasn't that kind of a dogmatist. And but after 2 years of it, I just couldn't take it anymore. It was very, very important for me. And at the beginning, I loved it. And as I met Paul-Émile, you are one of the most important people in my life. But after 2 years, I said, okay, I have to go back to New York. And I got to the point where I even refused to speak French for a while. And I never thought that I would go back to Europe. And I certainly thought, after I came back to New York and discovered Feldman and Cage, who I looked up personally, and then went to the series of concerts. There was a new music done at the little gallery called the Nonagon, and David Tudor played there. So of course I met him, and I met John, and Paul-Émile had talked about La Grande Aventure Nord-Américaine in relationship to the painting. And he said, and the musical equivalent must certainly be the people around John Cage. And I had heard some Cage before I left. And I was still in, you might say, the City College of New York mindset, and I didn't like it. But so I loved the painting, and I just loved the whole idea. And I thought, if this New York school isn't the thing, the alternative to European total serialism, then I'm totally alone in the world. But I connected with Feldman and Cage right away, especially Cage. I mean, I connected on a personal level. And that became, you might say, my in. And Cage was very welcoming and looked at my scores. And well, I won't go through all the details, but through my life, he's been very supportive and helpful in many, many different ways. So that's, in a way, that, yeah, that's how that happened. Did I completely answer your question? I think I missed something.
No, how did you get back?
Oh, how did I get back? Yeah, right. That was okay. I was never going to go. I was never going to go back. There was not even any interest in listening. All right, if you know, if Messiaen came, they did a Messiaen concert. Of course, I like Messiaen, and Ligeti was great. So it was nice that they were doing that, but there was nothing to learn from. You know, that was all past stuff. What was happening was what was happening in New York, and we were part of it. I just never thought of going back, but I got married. I got married to Julie Winter, who has continued to be an important part of my life as an astrologer, transmedium, spirit guide. And at a certain point, she said, you know, I've never been to Europe. Why don't you take me? So I said, okay, here we go. So it was like, you know, a summer vacation, 6 weeks, 2 weeks in London, and I could reconnect with people I knew from London. I had been invited to be a guest lecturer at the Cardiff College of Art. And so I knew art people in London. And then my brother my brother was a professor in Amsterdam. So 2 weeks in Amsterdam and then 2 weeks in Paris to reconnect with those friends of mine. Paul Emile was dead by then. So it was those things. And we went, and my wife took a hate on Holland. Well, she didn't get along with my brother's wife, that was part of it. But anyway, she took a hate on Holland. So next year it was, you know, 6 weeks, but London, Paris, and Italy. And after that, she said, we don't have to go anywhere else. Next year, it's just Italy.
Perfect.
We advanced through some slides and we're at Carrot Chew. Can you, there's this image of you and Ben Patterson.
All right, but that's connecting with this, because through Allison, I met Francesco Kunz.
Yes.
We went to Venice, of all places, and she said, well, get on a bus and go up to Oslo. Joe Jones is up there. He's been living there. And we went up and hung out with Joe Jones, who said, well, you know, the Italian have this siesta, they call it a pisolino. Phoebe, could you get me some water?
What?
I'm getting some water. So we met Francesco, and he asked for a work. He had done some beautiful things with, he was into luxury fluxus, you know, which I thought was an extremely oxymoronic type of thing, but you know, is Joe Jones music machines and none of this cheap crap on Canal Street that Joe was doing, but it was like a marble base with a gilded bronze thing holding a miniature violin and the little machine going like that. So he wanted to do something. So I thought, well, I had just done Metal Meditations as a dance participation thing with Elaine Summers. So I got all my sketches together and made a definitive kind of ready to seriograph thing. And we did Metal Meditations, and he turned it into this incredible thing, 45 pages, but with a beautiful boxed edition. And eventually, then that came through Emanuele Carcano, who eventually founded Algamargan Records. And Francesco wanted to put a record in the box. So we put in a recording of the metal meditations, and then the record that's become an independent thing on its own. And then I just well, all right, to make matters short, Julie and I divorced, and I thought, well, now I'm free to go to Europe all summer, 3 months of, and I had also met Rosanne Casey, and I did some work with her. So I just saw myself as being totally free to vagabond around and work with editors and performances, and there were people who were interested in my work that were not interested in America, and so it seemed like a great opportunity. So I started doing that, and I became like just part of the family. I mean, here in Reggio, I'm part of the cultural tradition of the city, because Pari Dispari and Rosanna's activity here is a historic thing in the Reggio Emilia, and they continue.
And you had done additions with Rosanna, but with Kantz, you also did those fabric banners, one of which
That
is
happened.
up
That happened later. But
Yeah.
of course, the first edition I did was Metal Meditations. That was before I did anything with Rosanna. And then I did other things too, like for instance, the bells, the Met Elementus, those hand bells that we
Beautiful.
showed a little bit earlier. That was also Francesco's idea. And of
Those
course,
were included in the exhibition we did at the Foremost Gallery at the University of Florida, as were the banners for Carrot Chew.
Yeah,
So-
yeah. Well, eventually what happened was, all right, Carrot Chew was first done in the Flux Loft on Chambers Street. And I did it on huge pieces of butcher paper, whatever you call it, very large sheets of cheap paper. As a matter of fact, I didn't even pick it up. But then I realized that somebody was picking up stuff after performances and sending them to the Zohm archive in Stuttgart. Eventually I met Hans Zohm, but I didn't know that all this stuff was like going off to Europe. I just left it there because it was all done in pencil, and it was large scale thing for the audience to, chew the carrots. And I know it's up there waiting. I'll get it in my mouth in a minute. And so the people did it, and then we first included the Carrot Chew in this. There's a portfolio with 6 or 7 Fluxus scores, and there's 4 Carrot Chew pages on one page. But eventually, when he started doing these large silk screen things, we decided to do 4 large pages, and that became the Carrot Chew. The Carrot Chew.
The Museum of Modern Art has the drawings from the Silverman collection that perhaps you can explain to us what we're looking at.
Yeah, well, they don't have the whole thing. Right, well, it's 4 pages. This is, in a way, it still has some of the old compositional thing, because there's a prelude and it goes through time, 1, 2, 3, 4. There's a development and a fixed order. So it's a classical piece in a way. And it just to start off, it had the prelude. The whole thing is you're supposed to chew next to somebody's ear. If Phoebe wants to come closer and listen, that's okay, but she's close enough. In any case, so as it says, just give carrots to the audience and all that. And so the first
There may be a few in the audience that have carrots. I think
Right.
Sean does.
So if you do, then the first thing is like you put your teeth, and then you very, very slowly increment. And well, you see what happens. Sean is not continuing.
I went too fast.
Oh, all right. beat you. And then it becomes more improvising.
He's a virtuoso.
Oh. So now we're in a situation where I got my mouth full of carrots. Like the thing that happened in Verona. I don't want to continue doing my mouth full of carrots. No, please,
What?
Of course, I have the glass, but there's water in it, which I mean. Gotta get rid of these carrots.
So
Actually, if there's just a little bit like this, you can swallow it, which is, I think most people in the audience did. But that's the prelude, where the increments until it finally snaps off, and then you add much more free improvisation. Well, you got a lot of stuff here.
yeah, we're just about out of time, and so I'm just screening through some of the other slides that we had. But
Out of time.
yes, but we have a question.
Just got started.
We have a question from the audience that says, "What's your biggest inspiration to create? What inspires you the most to create work?"
I got to get rid of it. I got to get it out of my head.
You have to get it out of your head.
I have to get it out of my head. I go crazy otherwise. Sometimes I can't sleep at night, and I yell to my muse, "Turn it off!" But the only solution is to write it down. Then it's done.
Is it really that? Is it really like you really get you can't sleep? You get obsessed with things.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, it just runs around my head. I get an idea. I mean, this last thing I did, people calls it my lockdown pieces. I started in 2019 and all the way through 2020, and wrote a few pieces at the beginning of 2021. So I call it the art of no art. And there are 378 piano pieces, all on one page, all on octave multiples. There's never any, or hardly ever any harmony, but just octave multiples, and indefinite repetition of some very, very reduced kind of things. And they came to me both as images and the refinement of how that thing should be put on the page is also an important part of it, not just kind of scribbling it down like Beethoven, and let the copyist figure out what you actually wrote there. No, the presentation, so almost as an artwork, is very, very important. But of course, in the case of a piano piece, these are related to sound. And once it comes into my mind, it's going on and on and on and on, and kind of getting refined. How long should it go on, and whether it goes up or whether it goes down, or it just stays there for a while, and then eventually it gets written down.
There's another question that just came up that we talked a little bit about Phoebe and your collaboration together, and we have a picture of you both collaborating here at the Bob Rauschenberg Gallery. But somebody was asking more about her story.
Yeah, Phoebe. Phoebe's off the screen and she's shaking her head.
No, stay with Philip.
I don't know. That's too general a question anyway.
Yeah, it's a general question.
I mean, it's great. Phoebe is great, and I've known her for a long time, and now we're doing some wonderful things together. And
we started with the single piano key, and we're ending with the meaning of life. And this is, there's 88 keys on a piano, and you're 88. So you must know some things about the meaning of life. So we put up your calligraphy here about
Right,
what the
well,
meaning of life
that's
is.
not, I did do a celebrating my birthday piece. It's called 88. And it's actually it's only 3 movements. And unlike most of the pieces, which I really just kind of knock off on a piece of 8.5 by 11 typing paper, these are done on the largest type, better quality paper. But it's just 3 movements of different ways of playing all 88 keys on the piano. So that's my birthday gift to myself. The meaning of life is just something else. I get up in the middle of the night. I never sleep all night through, and I get up a lot. And sometimes I'm thirsty. And like, for instance, Phoebe, how come you didn't give me grapefruit juice? This is just water. I like grapefruit juice. So let me tell you, when you're in the middle of the night and you get up, and the first hit of that ice cold grapefruit juice, you know the meaning of life. I mean, it's just beyond words.
That's great. Well, there's another question just about, like, what are you exploring in your work right now? Like, what are you most interested in?
I'm not doing anything. I mean, I'm not creating anything. I'm working on this series I mentioned, The Art of No Art, because there's another Sean McCann, who does records, recital records in California. And he already has done 2 records of mine, and there's some more in the works, but he's been, collecting stuff too. So, and I sent him, because I've got all the files and it's very easy for me to just send off the files. And the first thing he said was, I want to do it as a book. And this was totally off the wall to me, because I thought of it's a music score or so, and all my music scores are in Frog Peak Music. The mimeographed edition. They're very, very beautifully done as a performance thing. You put them up on the piano rack, and so you play them. And but he said he wants to do a book, and we start talking about the presentation of the book, and he's really serious about it. So he says, I've got to have them in 300 DPIs. So I sent them down to the carteleria. How do you say carteleria in English? The print shop.
Print shop.
And I just had them do it. I somehow imagine what 300 DPI is going to be very, very heavy. I won't be able to send the files through the the email and everything else. So let them do it, and the machine will do it perfectly. So, and he sends me back a list. So, and they send the email to Sean, and I get back a list with 50 numbers saying these were cropped. I said, oh, I'll do it myself for the 50. And I realized there's no problem with them it being too heavy at all. As a matter of fact, he said, can you make it 400 DPIs? Yeah, no problem. I click, 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 click on my scanner, and 400 DPIs, and I just finished them. So the last thing I did was like scanning some pages of this particular.
Philip, can you just speak briefly about the importance of your archives now going to Northwestern University? That Northwestern has. Yeah.
Well, I've gone to Northwestern University. I don't know about the importance of it. All I can tell you is that they said that they're specializing in music of that period. They've got Charlotte Mormon, they've got John Cage and all that, and I felt very, very honored to be considered one of the people that they should archive. And
Yes.
Scott Kraft came here, it was a wonderful visit, and he looked at everything and crated it all off. I mean, basically, the not original, not artwork or anything that would be exhibited, but a lot of my scores, that you can get them from Frog Peak, but they've got a lot of Frog Peak editions. But he took everything, catalogs from art shows, books with interviews, things about me, all the files of concert programs and letters and, the stuff that archive people do. And that's there. As far as I know, and helped by the pandemic, not much work has happened yet. They also took all of my recordings. I had a whole wall full of cassette recordings, and they said, "God, you got to digitalize them." I said, "Well, I know that." She said, "Well, give them to us, and we'll do it." So they've got that too, and they're digitalizing it. As I say, I don't think they've done too much yet, but I know that it's available for serious people because Ben Pickett wrote this chapter on my music for the Judson Dance Theater when MoMA did the big exhibit. So he went there and looked through the stuff, and they allowed him to do that. So it's there, and I think that's a great place for it to be. I just should mention that there are other archives. There's Luigi Bonotto, who's got a lot of my stuff, and I think a lot of the stuff you put up is from him, and he's maniacal about putting the stuff up. So everything he has is on the internet already. And there's also the Institute for the Study of the Avant-Garde in Zagreb, which has got a small selection of stuff, but they've got some stuff. And then, then there are collections, a piece or two in the Getthe, the Museum am Auswahl in Dortmund. I mean, there's stuff that's all around, one or two pieces here and there. And so it's around,
Well, we gotta call it an evening. I'm afraid we're out of time, but thank you so much, Philip, for going through this with us, and thanks to Jade. And I noticed Jack Massing is with Jade now, who was a visiting artist last semester, and we'll be introducing Ken Friedman next week. So come back and see Ken Friedman talk. Thanks.
Okay.
Everybody.
All right. Can I hook in? I can't zoom in on that. When Ken is
Yeah, you can. We'll get you.
Just do the same thing we did here.
We can get you there.
We'll work it out. We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see how where I am, what's happening.
All right.
Okay, thanks a lot, you guys. Yeah, I mean, you helped me a lot because I didn't know what to do, but you did it for me. Talk about this, talk about this, talk about this, talk about this. All right. So, no, it's been very, very nice.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Good night.